Grail watch. Everyone has a Grail watch. When I first got into watches back in 2015-16, it didn't take me long to notice the Tudor Black Bay. Back then I remember thinking to myself, wow, I would love to have one of these in my collection. But I quickly got familiar with the dimensions of the case and realized that the watch was far too large for me. So at that point I kind of just put Tudor in the back of my mind, and I didn't really think about it for a while after that. But then in 2018, everything changed. Because Tudor released the Black Bay 58, which was everything I liked about the original Black Bay, but in a reduced size. Now the problem was, I hadn't quite worked up the nerve to making such a large purchase. And it would still be a couple years before I was psychologically ready to make a purchase that extravagant. And of course, there was the other problem that you just couldn't get your hands on one. I couldn't try one on, the authorized dealers that I was familiar with never seemed to have them. And once again, I just kind of put Tudor on the back burner, and it wasn't until a couple years later that everything changed again. Because they made it in blue, and a beautiful blue at that. Now, I like the original 58 in black with the gilt indices, chapter ring, and bezel markers. But that blue is just gorgeous. I finally had what I thought of as an affordable, obtainable grail. Well, it was sort of obtainable. Again, you still couldn't get one. So I waited, and I bought other watches and other divers. But I knew that the Black Bay 58 in blue would eventually be part of my collection. And about 2 months ago, I finally bought that watch. Tudor first launched the original Black Bay in 2012. The Black Bay was meant to be their modern take on the Tudor Submariner. Although modern Tudor Submariners feature crown guards, the Tudor Black Bay heritage was modeled after the reference from the 1950s, which featured no crown guards. The original Black Bay was 41 millimeters in diameter, with a case thickness of 15 millimeters and a lug-to-lug of 50 millimeters. While many consumers loved the original Black Bay, it really wasn't a viable option for those of us with smaller wrist sizes. To this day, I still think of the original Black Bay as just some big hunk of metal, but luckily Tudor addressed this issue by coming up with the scaled-down Tudor Black Bay 58. The 58 falls into the Goldilocks zone of 39 millimeters in diameter. 39 millimeters seems to be the near-perfect size for anyone with a small to medium-sized wrist. Now sure, there are some men out there who would say that 39 millimeters is kind of small, but for the majority of us, 39 millimeters is a great size. Tudor has also made the case thinner, 11.7 millimeters, with a lug-to-lug of 47.5. 11.7 millimeters is so much thinner and makes a big difference in terms of wearability for someone with a smaller wrist size. Shrinking down the case means shrinking down the movement, right? Well, not exactly. Although Tudor had the option of giving this watch an Edda-based movement and simply hiding it behind the solid case back, they opted to give it their in-house movement, the MT5402. Even though the movement is significantly smaller than the movement in the 41 millimeters, it has the same specs. 70-hour power reserve, a hacking seconds function, and a high beat rate of 4 Hz. It's also shock resistant and built to chronometer specs. Now admittedly, it doesn't go through the impressive 200-step process that Omega puts their timepieces through to get their master chronometer certification. But if you were to purchase an Omega Seamaster, you'd be looking at a significant price increase. Tudor is offering you an in-house movement that is cost certified for under $4,000. The Tudor Black Bay is giving you a lot of watch and is a great option for the consumer looking for a quality timepiece, but still trying to make a sensible purchase. Now let's take a moment to appreciate that dial. The Black Bay features Tudor's classic snowflake-style handset, which of course are fully loomed along with the hour markers. And a nice touch here is that the second hand is loomed as well. The watch features white hour markers with a silver border. Under the sapphire crystal along the white minute scale, you will see a silver chapter ring to match the silver border of the indices. This Tudor is such a handsome timepiece, with its perfectly proportioned case and combination of brushed and high polish finishing. Then there's a lack of crown guards. Not only does it make the case more symmetrical, but it draws more attention to the stamped crown with the iconic Tudor rose. I mentioned in one of my earlier videos that at one point I was debating between this watch and my Oris Aquis Clean Ocean edition. I opted for the Aquis for several reasons. Not the least of which was because the ceramic bezel versus the stainless steel bezel, the fact that there was a significant price difference in the Oris's favor, and also that the Oris was readily available while I would have to wait for the Black Bay 58. Although I was, and am still extremely happy with my Oris Aquis, the Black Bay 58 stayed in the back of my mind, and over time I began to appreciate it more and more. Then it ultimately became one of my grail watches. After I had the opportunity to try the watch on in person, I realized I didn't care as much as I thought about the watch having a stainless steel bezel. In fact, at that point I really couldn't imagine the watch having anything else but the beautiful brushed stainless steel. I'm sure it would look fine with a matte ceramic bezel, but I've grown to love the stainless steel. And if I scratch it, then it's just part of the watch's journey and adds to the overall aesthetic of the watch. What can I say? I fell in love with the Black Bay 58 in blue and I just had to have it. Since the purchase of my first Swiss watch, I definitely feel like my taste has changed. Which I think happens when you start collecting because there's no such thing as a perfect watch. But there was one point in time where I felt like a watch without a date complication was a total deal breaker. But now as I expose myself to more and more timepieces, I think that a certain type of date window can completely throw off the symmetry of a dial. As I continue collecting, I'm starting to appreciate simple watches more and more. It's only been the last couple years that I've really started to appreciate a good three-hander. For years, I thought that my grail watch was a Rolex Datejust. But now it's an Explorer. The last month, I've only been really wearing 3 watches. The 2 watches that Oris sent me because I definitely want to experience them before I talk about them. But when I'm not wearing those, I'm wearing my Black Bay. I originally purchased this Tudor on the NATO strap, but I currently have it on a leather NATO. The matte navy blue dial just looks so good on a leather strap. Sure, I could have opted for the bracelet, but I don't really like this whole fake rivets thing. I just don't get it. Plus, I also have 3 other divers on bracelets right now. A diver, ostensibly used for going in the water, should theoretically look wrong on a leather strap, something you wouldn't want to get wet. But I like the look. It's different, and it's not like I'm going scuba diving anytime soon. After owning this watch for 2 months, I've been wearing it a lot. It is simple and predictable. Some might even call it boring, but I prefer to think of it as effortless and reliable. I find myself reaching for it constantly. My Black Bay is a watch that I never get bored of, where some of the other pieces in my collection, I can go through stages where I'm wearing them less. Not my Tudor. Part of the reason there was so much hype around this timepiece is because it's universally appealing. I get so many compliments when I'm wearing this watch, a lot of which are from people who've never even heard of Tudor. This Tudor is technically a tool watch, but no one buys a Black Bay 58 to go scuba diving with. It has the capacity, but we buy it because it's a fun, effortless timepiece with a rich history, but we mostly buy it because it's so good looking. As a watch collector, I know that not all of the pieces in my collection are going to stay for very long. Some of them just aren't going to get enough wrist time to justify keeping them in the long run. I'll never sell my Oris Aquis because it's one of the first high-quality watches that I ever purchased, and now it's become one of the cornerstones of my collection. I don't know if my 58 will be able to fill the same role, but I definitely think it could be a possibility.